I know everybody's had very hectic days. We want to make some space for the program this afternoon. And I'd like to invite Sister Kathleen Cole up. She's going to share an invocation with us. Sister Kathleen represents member organization Catholic Health East at ICCR, and she's been a member of our community for, we said, a little over 10 years. As administrator of shareholder advocacy, she has engaged many corporations over the years on many issues of corporate responsibility, but she has a special passion for human rights. She is a strategic lead in ICCR's work on human trafficking and slavery. Outside of her work with ICCR and human rights, Kathleen represents organizations led by women religious that are very active on this issue, including the Catholic Sisters Against Human Trafficking and Dawn's Place, a residential facility for trafficked women. This year, Kathleen was representing not just ICCR, but the Leadership Conference of Women Religious at 2 anti-trafficking events at the White House. So she's practically on speed dial at this point. I know I speak for all of us at ICCR when I say that her compassion for trafficking survivors and her passionate advocacy on their behalf has made it a genuine pleasure to work beside her.
Thank you, Susanna. Never in my life have I heard that one before. Thank you. I thought maybe today as we start, we could begin by observing a few moments of silence in solidarity for the survivors and in solidarity for the more than 21 million women, children, and men who suffer each day, each moment, from modern day slavery. So if we could take a few moments. O loving and compassionate God, we give you praise and thanks for this day and for this gathering. Inspire and energize us with a firm belief in the dignity of the human person. Fill our hearts with the fire of your love and with the desire to ensure justice for all. Challenge our apathy in allowing human trafficking to exist. Knowing that this is a monumentous task, we turn to you, O God, for insight and courage to take the risks our faith demands of us. O God of hope, look with mercy on those who struggle for freedom. Give liberty to those who are bound by the bonds of modern-day slavery. They have been exploited and traumatized. They have been treated like commodities rather than as human beings created in your likeness. Ease their pain, restore their sense of dignity, give them courage and hope. We pray also for those who buy and sell or hold others as slaves, that they will realize the evil of human trafficking, sensitize their minds and hearts to act with justice, and to recognize the dignity of every person. Help us who are free to work for the liberation of those who are enslaved, and to remember our responsibility to use our influence to change what is unjust. Give us the wisdom and boldness to break the bonds of modern-day slavery in this world and to stand in solidarity with those who are held captives, that together we will find paths to freedom that is your gift to us. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is David Foster. I'm the chairman of the board of directors of the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility. On behalf of the board of directors and on behalf of all of ICCR, I'm happy to welcome you to this 27th special event, Breaking the Bonds. the ICCR special event has become a truly exceptional program. We look forward to it each year. It's an opportunity for us to gather the many practitioners of socially responsible investing, to engage in provocative conversation, good fellowship, and valuable learning. It's been a wonderful experience for us here, year after year, to bring you together to share this time with us. As you know, for more than 40 years, 42 to be exact, ICCR has provided the voice of faith in the investing world, in the world of corporate social responsibility. Many of you in this audience are actively involved in that work, and then many of you are supporters of it one way or another, perhaps financially or in some other way. And perhaps some of you are just intrigued by socially responsible investing and you're here because you want to know a little bit more about it. But for whatever reason, we want to say thank you to all of you for your support. It makes us a stronger organization. So thank you so very much. And now we come to a very important part of our program, and I'd like to invite the Reverend Seamus Finn to come up here, and he and I have the real joy and pleasure of presenting our Legacy Award this year. You may remember just a couple of years ago, the Board of Directors established the Legacy Award to recognize truly outstanding leadership in the area of corporate social responsibility, to recognize those persons or institutions even who really speak with the moral voice in the corporate boardrooms around our country. And we are so thrilled that this year we have 2 recipients, and I will make the first presentation and then Seamus will make the second. But if I could begin. Thank you so much, Seamus. Yeah, please. Our first recipient, and this is a very special award for me. Pardon me, and I'll explain that to you in a minute. But our first recipient is Vedette Bullock-Mixon, who just recently retired from Westpath Investment Management. You may know Westpath by its name, General Board of Pension and Health Benefits of the United Methodist Church. But Westpath is a lot easier to say. And she really has been active in ICCR for decades, doing phenomenal work. And this was, given her retirement this year, this was just a particularly special time to recognize her and what she's done. These awards, and I'm sorry you can't see them more closely, are in the form of a shareholder resolution. And so what I'd like to do is read a part of it to you, just so you can get a flavor of this. So it says, proposal, that's right under Vedette's picture here. It says, this proposal has been submitted by the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, 475 Riverside Drive, et cetera, et cetera. Resolved that the stockholders of all publicly held U.S. corporations acknowledge the contributions of Vedette Bullock-Mixon for her work on behalf of vulnerable people throughout the world to ensure more just and sustainable corporations. And let me just read a few more lines from this. Vedette was instrumental in successfully advocating for responsible supply chain management at Nike and led the investor engagement effort with Walmart to produce a corporate sustainability report. Vedette's legacy on human rights and environmental advocacy endures in the corporate policies and practices she has influenced over the course of her 31-year career with Westpath and in partnership with other ICCR members. And if I may be given a moment to say a personal word, many of you may not know, but Vedette was my boss. She really brought me into the world of socially responsible investing, and I worked for her until her retirement this year. And I just want to tell you, not only is she an outstanding example of the work of socially responsible investing, but she was a fantastic person to work for. I cannot thank her enough for the opportunities she gave me and the support she gave me. I came to this with no education or preparation for this work. And Vedette has just been a wonderful person to work with. I don't think mine was the only heart that was broken when we found out she would be retiring this summer, but it has truly left quite a void in our agency. She is a remarkable United Methodist, dedicated to our church and its social principles, and definitely dedicated to the work of helping others around the world. So I am thrilled to give this to her today. Vedette, would you come up, please?
Well, first and foremost, let me thank David for those kind words. It was my privilege and pleasure to have David on the staff, along with other individuals, Anita Green, and also Barbara Fears, who were members of the corporate responsibility team back at Westpac. I'd just like to say, first and foremost, I'm just so grateful to be sharing this Legacy Award with Sister Barbara Ayers. We go back a ways, and I'm glad I get to speak first. She's such a tough act to follow. I also want to let you know, my husband and son wanted me to especially congratulate you on this award. They became members of your fan club back in 2008, and you so graciously reached out, contacted someone, and gave them prime seats at the old Yankee Stadium. And they still remember you for that, so thank you very much. I'm also grateful to Laura Barry, to the ICCR Governing Board, and whoever else may have been instrumental in me receiving this award. I'm humbled and privileged. I feel like the student is also getting an award with the teacher, and Sister Barbara Ayers, you've made a profound impression on me in my journey in socially responsible investing. Just over the years, I've been favorably impressed with my opportunity to work with all of you. I think we've accomplished some things. There's more to do. And this award serves kind of as a concrete example of encouragement to me that I want to continue to help ICCR with this very important work. So thank you very much, and I appreciate it.
So it falls to me to present this Legacy Award, a great honor, to Sister Barbara Ayers of the Sisters of Charity of New Jersey, Convent Station. And welcome to all the members of the Sisters of Charity of Convent Station who are with us this afternoon. I was going to try and read this without my glasses, Barbara, but I don't think it's going to work. And you know how that slows me down sometimes. But a couple of comments from this Legacy Award. Resolved that the stockholders of all publicly held U.S. corporations acknowledge the contributions of Sister Barbara Ayers for her work on behalf of vulnerable people throughout the world to ensure more just and sustainable corporations. Proposed and adopted by the Board of Directors of ICCR. Let me read a couple of comments from the supporting statement. Sister Barbara's faith conviction in the concept of corporate social responsibility and her commitment to seeing it manifest in the decision-making of top management at the helms of the world's most influential companies gives meaning to the phrase, speaking truth to power. According to Sister Barbara, a consistent articulation of moral voice and the moral decision-making must be a part of a corporation's activities. In the 40 years since she first assumed the role of shareholder advocate representing her community, she has become an iconic figure in shareholder advocacy, inspiring awe and admiration among her colleagues here at ICCR, and a fair measure of anxiety, it says here, among corporate CEOs. At this point, I'm supposed to list some of those, I presume. Renowned for her keen intellect, her ability to interpret complex business information, her strategic vision, and her intolerance for obfuscation, companies eager to improve their performance continue to seek her counsel. Said David Burgess, manager of social sustainability at the Ford Motor Company, when I met Sister Barbara, I finally understood what the term tough love meant. I hope you're here, David, for this. In my first Ford Motor Company ICCR dialogue, she scared the living daylights out of me, while she amazed me with her knowledge of climate change, fuel economy, and maquiladoras. Sometimes I thought she was too tough on me, and often I was frustrated. But she was a great supporter and provided feedback. David, I should assure you also that for some of Barbara's dearest colleagues in ICCR, she's often come across in the same manner. Always supportive, always helpful, and as Dedette said, always a great leader and mentor. Thanksgiving then, Sister Barbara, for your generous service on numerous committees of the governing board and unparalleled commitment to the growth and success of our organization. We are deeply grateful and offer this Legacy Award of 2013.
Thank you, Seamus. Thanks the Board of Directors for this honor. But the thing that we're doing today is celebrating both Dedette, our work in trafficking, modern day slavery, and as I've said before in my own community and with my family, if there's an anniversary or jubilee or a celebration, there's a time for reflection as to what all that has meant. So for me, as I've said, there are gifts in this and there are challenges. I am very conscious of the gift that happened 42 years ago when wise men, some of whom are here, formed the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility and drew together a group of people that had not worked well together on a number of justice issues. This is one of the finest examples of that work, and it is a gift. It's a gift also that I've been able to be with so many wonderful people. I've met so many good people in corporations. I've met some that have been scared to death of me. But at the same time, I think there is a tremendous desire to improve and be faithful stewards of their work. That's a gift. It's a gift to be with some people in very close interactions. I've been with Dedette, so I honor her as well. I'm grateful that the gift of my congregation that supported this, the Sisters of Charity, through endless general superiors, councils, who said, keep going. I'm grateful for the gift of the Sisters of Charity, the Incarnate Word in Houston, who did so much to enable me to work with them and have been unbelievable supporters of this organization. So I honor them as well. The challenges are great. There is much to be done. This issue that we're discussing today is one of many. So if you're an analyst, you need to be looking at the social end and risk analysis of what is happening to corporations and the role they play in the world. If you're with a corporation and you came here tonight to honor us with your financial support, or you love us in some way or other, you must keep at it. You must find new champions in your organization to keep this work going. It is absolutely incumbent upon us that we keep moving forward. It's been a challenge with some of my colleagues who sometimes, as Seamus suggests, I've been after. Does anyone remember Seamus not being after people? Does anyone remember that? So this is a wonderful time. I'm grateful for your recognition. I say this on behalf of every woman religious, male religious, lay men and women of all faiths. You are the ones honored.
blessings on both Sister Barbara and Vedette for their beautiful witness to us and to others. Well, we've still got quite a program ahead of us. So I'm going to turn things over to our Executive Director of the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility, Laura Berry, and she will take us through the rest of today's program.
Don't worry, I'm really only going to be up here for about 3 minutes. I first want to start by thanking David and thanking Sister Kathleen for bringing us together with words of wisdom, welcome, and prayer. Although I'm trying to buy a little time, being in the unfortunate position of following Sister Barbara, I really do want to offer my special thanks to our legacy awardees. Sister Barbara Ayers, Vedette Bullock-Nixon, the examples that you have both set through your work and your wisdom have inspired me long before I joined the ICCR staff in 2007. I remember all too well, and Sister Barbara will not remember this because I was a mere speck in the universe of work she was doing. All too well, a Pfizer shareholder meeting where I noticed a crowd was gathering, and I thought, who is in the middle of this scrum? And they were all sort of trying to figure out what this individual was going to be saying at that day's meeting. And as I sort of, being a relatively nosy and curious person, started to poke through the crowd, I saw at its very heart Sister Barbara Ayers, who I knew by reputation, and I was delighted to be sharing the room with her and to be watching her at work. I will be forever grateful to Vedette for her guidance as a member of the search committee that led to my hiring as ICCR's executive director. We're so pleased to celebrate both of your works today. Since we are in a new venue this year, I really would like everybody to kind of look around. I'm going to be changing my annual poll a bit so that our speakers and our first-timers can better understand who's out there in today's audience. But I have to tell you, I'm struck. This is the first time I've seen the venue as well. The staff is really the folks responsible for making this all happen. I am really struck by the poignancy, first of all, in a world where we are all getting more and more concerned about climate change. And we know for sure that the reason that we changed venues was because of the catastrophic impact of Hurricane Sandy on Bridgewaters at South Street Seaport. I think it's kind of poignant to look around the room and feel like we're all underwater. Maybe this is kind of practice. I don't know. It's both delightful and frankly a little unsettling. So I'd like to just ask, if you will indulge me, all the first-time attendees at today's ICCR special event to just stand up and wave your programs. I know it's a little dark, and if there was a way to bring up the house lights a little bit, that would be so wonderful. But I'd just love to see how many new folks, first-timers we have in the room. It is so gratifying. Welcome. Welcome. Thank you so much for sharing this special day with us, and we hope to see a lot more of you in the future. Now, let me ask all the representatives of the organizations who sponsor this event to do the same. Could you stand up, please, if you are a sponsor? You'll know if you're a sponsor because you have a little blue tag on your Again, the underwater theme. I know that everyone in the audience thanks you because through your financial support, you help make our work possible, and we are so grateful. You support our work not only with your sponsorships, but more importantly, with your willingness to come to the table time and time again. I'm so grateful that you're here and working with us. At long last, let me ask the ICCR staff and the governing board to stand and accept our appreciation for their faithful and diligent work on behalf of this movement. Could I ask the board and the staff to please stand? We all know it would be impossible to list the many ways you contribute to our work, and we're grateful for the extraordinary contributions you make day in and day out. I'd also like to make sure that everyone recognizes that this year's event was conceived and executed entirely by our staff, with very little interference from management. As we settle into another afternoon of learning and community building, please join me in heartfelt thanks to Victoria, David, Julie, Nadira, Allison, Susanna, Gail, Mary, Kyle, and Ava. Thank you all for your hard work and your dedication to our cause. It's difficult to single out particular colleagues this year, but if I could just ask Allison, David, Mary, and Susanna, and our wonderful volunteers, Agnes, Patricia, and Will, to just sort of wave so people know and they can thank you in person or maybe buy you a drink this evening. They certainly qualify for a very special thank you. It is so great to be at a podium when your whole job is just saying thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And finally, let me ask everyone representing an ICCR member organization to stand. The reason you're getting this exercise is that the food is very good, and so you'll be grateful for this when it's over. If you represent an ICCR member organization, would you please indulge me and just stand one more time? As our legacy awardees recognize, it's your work and vision that bring meaning to the expression, corporate responsibility, and responsible investment. So thank you all very much. Throughout our 42-year history, ICCR has been a pioneer. For over 4 decades, ICCR members have shown a wide range of concerned investors how to initiate conversations about challenging issues with corporate leadership. As always, our annual event recognizes the hope that together we can solve some of the world's most intractable problems. Of course, there are very few issues that challenge our humanity as profoundly as modern-day slavery. And I'm truly grateful to everyone gathered here today for your commitment to working with ICCR to counter this egregious practice. Every year, I share my hope that you will be challenged, inspired, and perhaps invigorated by the shared wisdom of this afternoon's speakers, whose work contributes to the global effort to all break the bonds of modern-day slavery. Now, please join me in welcoming ICCR's own Senior Program Director, where is he? Right smack dab in the front row, Reverend David Schilling, who will get the conversation started. Thank you all.
Breaking the bonds of modern-day slavery requires, as we've heard, relentless persistence, commitment, courage, compassionate action, and innovative strategies to address modern-day slavery. I believe we are reaching a tipping point with growing public awareness of the nature and the extent of the issue. Civil society groups that haven't necessarily worked that well together, coming together to help survivors as well as to promote legislation that will really make a difference in terms of ending trafficking and slavery. With the US government coordinating its many resources through the President's Interagency Task Force to monitor and combat trafficking, which I'm sure Ambassador will talk a little bit more about, is a huge effort amongst 14 different cabinet members. Leading corporations, implementing the corporate responsibility to respect human rights, not just in their own operations, but all the way down their global supply chains. and investors engaging a wide range of business sectors as active share owners, concerned about this egregious human rights violation and the risk it poses to people and to companies. And the faith community that's active at the local, at the national, at the international level to address systemic causes of slavery and affirm the dignity of every human being. So to reduce and ultimately eliminate modern-day slavery requires a deepened level of collaboration among every single stakeholder, every sector of society. And today we are fortunate to have a panel composed of representatives of government, of corporate sector, civil society, faith institutions, the media, to reflect on where we are and what we really need to do creatively together to forward the movement to end slavery in all its forms. But before I introduce our moderator, I invite a few representatives of the ICCR community, some over 60, 70 organizations actively working in the ICCR to really combat slavery and trafficking through a range of interactions with companies. And they will give you a bit of a glimpse of some of the impact that this work has had, starting many years ago within the supply chain, the last 8 or 10 years in the hospitality sector, as they engage companies to make a difference in terms of their business practices and policies down to the community.
As we work with companies to implement policies to eradicate human trafficking and modern-day slavery, it's important that we keep in our mind always the stories and faces of survivors. In our work with U.S. Airways on human trafficking, we are working to really raise public awareness of these horrendous crimes that often happen in the shadows. The anti-trafficking ads U.S. Airways placed in their in-flight magazine over the past 2 years have really shed light on sex and labor trafficking, and is a great example of a company doing that. You know, without these types of ads, without this awareness, then really we need it. And the bottom line is we need it to recognize that sex and labor trafficking are happening all around us. And so as we are aware of them, we can then address it. And so we're very grateful to companies who work with us on this issue. I represent Catholic Health East.
I'm Chris Meyer with Everence Financial and the Praxis Mutual Funds. ICCR members have been in dialogue with the Hershey Company for over 5 years on the issue of child exploitation on the cocoa farms of West Africa. And in October of last year, Hershey announced its commitment to sourcing 100% certified cocoa for all its chocolate lines by 2020. And this certified cocoa will be verified by third-party auditors to ensure that it is in line with the highest international standards for labor and environmental practices. Given Hershey's share of the chocolate market and its influence in the industry, this is a major step forward. And when combined with the actions of other chocolate companies, it provides significant momentum in the effort to eradicate child labor in the cocoa industry.
Hi, I'm Lauren Compare from Boston Common Asset Management. I think as we've, ICCR really early on recognized that a multi-stakeholder approach and having key stakeholders, all key stakeholders at the table, including victims, was really essential in combating and confronting modern day slavery and human trafficking. And I think in terms of our demonstration of that, working over the last 5 years under the Responsible Sourcing Network on both conflict minerals sourced from the Democratic Republic of Congo, as well as addressing child labor in the cotton fields in Uzbekistan, bringing together labor and trade associations, unions, human rights NGOs, companies, investors, and most importantly, government officials to really rally around and looking at effective ways of working together have really been a game changer, I think. And ICCR and the way in which it approaches these types of issues comprehensively is really, I think, a demonstration of our leadership.
Hi, I'm Julie Tanner with Christian Brothers Investment Services. The International Labor Organization tells us that 14 of 21 million people suffer the human indignity of slave labor. 14 million of 21 million. It's an amazing statistic. ICCR is working on this in a variety of ways, including encouraging companies to ensure that their supply chains are slavery-free, to work to create ethical recruitment policies, and to create policies and practices on fair and responsible hiring. No employee should have to pay for a job. We encourage companies to strengthen their work on this issue. I know many of you in this room are doing wonderful work, and we look forward to your ongoing leadership to strengthen this and to help ensure that slavery-free supply chains are a fact.
I'm Pat Daly, a Dominican sister of Caldwell, New Jersey, and direct the work of the Tri-State Coalition for Responsible Investment. And today we're building on the momentum of our Celebration Without Exploitation campaign that started 4 years ago by ICCR members in reaching out to hotels as they hosted the Super Bowl. We've attempted to raise awareness of the potential of any sporting event that might really attract additional and a spike in trafficking. This year, the Tri-State Coalition for Responsible Investment is reaching out to hotels in the New York and New Jersey area. Just last week, Margot, I've got a prop with me. Margot Morris is on our staff. She's coordinating the training. We worked with over 200 volunteers last week, reaching out to over 300 hotels in New Jersey, and we'll be working with about 500 hotels in New York with additional volunteers in the New York area, asking them to train their workers, their staffs. And we work, ECPAC is here. They'll be working with us on the training. And we're just also working, we've got this incredible coalition of NGOs, about 50 groups in New Jersey, the New Jersey Coalition Against Human Trafficking. Very different. I mean, look at that momentum from when Sister Susan started this back with CDIS just 4 years ago in Dallas. So we're really looking at a time where the travel industry is on the alert and all the employees will be focused on watching and making sure that they know what to do when they encounter trafficking.
So on April 24th, 2013, a continent away and north of Dhaka at the Rana Plaza, garment factory collapsed, and with a death toll north of 1,200 people. And that clearly pointed out to us the tremendous human cost when retailers and suppliers and factory owners and governments don't accept responsibility of providing a safe working environment for workers. And ICCR immediately responded, and we were successful in gathering the support of $3.1 trillion of assets under management by other investors across the world to respond and to support the Bangladesh Fire and Safety Accord, and which is now numbers more than 80 companies. And we continue to try and recruit more companies to become partners in that. I think this points out clearly to us that worker safety is a real priority for institutional investors. And the system of supply chain for the garments that most of us put on every day when we go to work needs seriously to be addressed. And unfortunately, it's taken the great loss of life in Bangladesh to bring this into the public consciousness, but we believe it can be a tipping point in changing the entire sector. And so thanks to all for your support.
So let's thank the representatives of ICCR and the companies that have responded to the engagements to really help move the ball forward. we're actually going to get to this incredible panel. My next task is very, very easy, and it's an honor to introduce the moderator, Stephen Greenhouse, who will then introduce the rest of the panel. Stephen really started a long time ago with the New York Times in 1983, the year I moved to New York, and has been a labor reporter since 1995, covering a whole range of issues that you and I have read about and have gotten a deepened understanding of issues, whether it's farm workers, the fact that they're not covered by national legislation, the National Labor Relations Act, as it was passed in 1935 and amended, etc. He's written a lot about Walmart and all the issues that we know well as we've engaged the company, including that story where workers are literally in stores cleaning overnight and couldn't get out, locked in to stores in this country. And now more recently, since Tazreen, the fire in November, and the Rana Plaza, as Seamus indicated, has done excellent work covering that issue, not so much from the perspective of what is left undone, but rather to kind of report what is taking place and the accord, which Seamus mentioned, over 80 companies working with trade unions, with civil society organizations in a new way of working together that has real potential. I think the reporting, Stephen, has been excellent. You should get an award. And the editorial policy of the New York Times, exemplified in today's editorial, around calling on the government of Bangladesh to increase the minimum wages that are abysmally low right now, $38 per month. So, Stephen, thanks for being with us. Congratulations on your work. We look forward to further spotlight on the key issues that are impacting our world and society. And it's now your job to introduce the rest of the panel. Thank you.
Thank you, David. That's very, very kind. I've never done a panel on forced labor before with discotheque lighting. And when Laura called me when David called me to invite me, I thought he said, we're going to do a panel on Breaking Bad, one of my favorite shows, not Breaking the Bonds. And I realized when the Emmys gave the best drama award to Breaking Bad, they meant to give it to the Breaking the Bonds panel. So we should all be impressed and thankful that the Interfaith Center has assembled such an impressive panel on forced labor and on strategies to counter and combat today's horrific modern-day slavery. I'm honored to be moderating such a distinguished panel. I've been writing about labor and workplace matters for the New York Times for more than a decade now. I write about minimum wage violations and efforts to unionize workers at various companies, and Wisconsin and Indiana and Michigan and other states rolling back union rights. But in writing about all this, I realized that in many ways, by far the most abysmal practice that workers face in the world today is forced labor, bonded labor, and human trafficking. I should add, of course, what happened to the more than 1,100 workers in Rana Plaza is horrific and evil, and let's pray that nothing like that ever happens again. It boggles the mind to contemplate that 21 million people around the world are modern-day slaves in forced labor, according to ILO statistics. It also boggles the mind that more than 5 million of these people are children. I must confess that as a journalist who writes about labor, the hardest subject to cover in many ways is forced labor and human trafficking. One reason is that it's often so hidden. The malign people who traffic in other human beings and hold them in slavery often do an excellent job in keeping these people invisible and silent. Similarly, the victims of forced labor, today's modern-day slaves, are locked inside homes or brothels or brickyards, hidden. They're often threatened with all sorts of horrors and violence if they try to escape or attempt to talk with NGOs or the news media. So these are very difficult stories to get at and report on and write about. But we at the New York Times and many other media try to get the story out on the domestic workers who are effectively imprisoned working in affluent folks' homes on Long Island or Westchester County, or at diplomats' homes outside Washington, D.C. And we write when we can about the teenagers kidnapped from Latin America and then trafficked to New Jersey across the river and other states to work as prostitutes. And we write about the 10-year-olds and 12-year-olds who work as bonded laborers in India or Pakistan, or in forced labor on chocolate plantations, cocoa plantations in West Africa. I will be the first to acknowledge that we in the news media don't write enough about this subject. We haven't kept our eye on the ball enough. It's hard to really do these stories. Fortunately, the Interfaith Center on Corporate Responsibility has kept its eye on this particular ball year in and year out. And out of that concern comes today's panel. We are fortunate today to have these experts to discuss forced labor and modern-day slavery. We have Lenny Ashworth, General Manager of Global Diversity at Delta Airlines. I was looking at Letty's resume before. You juggle so many balls and have so many responsibilities. I don't know how you do it, but one of Letty's responsibility is to help oversee Delta's noble efforts to help ferret out, human trafficking on airplanes. Ambassador Louis CdeBaca is head of the State Department's, U.S. State Department's Office to monitor and combat trafficking in persons. And Ambassador CdeBaca played an instrumental role in prosecuting the largest slavery prosecution in United States history, involving the enslavement of more than 300 Vietnamese and Chinese workers at a garment factory in American Samoa. And you won a nice award for your great work on that. Matul is director of the Survivor Network of the Coalition Against Slavery and Trafficking, CAST. Ima came to the United States from Indonesia as a teenager. She was promised $150 a month in pay, but when she arrived in Los Angeles, labor recruiters forced her to become an imprisoned domestic worker. She often worked 18 hours a day, 7 days a week, and we'll ask you to tell us a little more about those unfortunate times. Susan Stern is chair of the Presidential Advisory Council on Faith-Based and Neighborhood Initiatives, and they're doing a lot of work on forced labor and slavery and how to combat it. Susan is the immediate past national campaign chair of the Jewish Federations of North America. So the way the panel is set up, I'm told, is we have 40 minutes. I will pose questions and we'll discuss, and then we'll have 30 minutes of questions and answer from the audience. So I'll begin by asking the panelists, why is human trafficking, why is forced labor, modern-day slavery so pervasive?
Okay. Well, I think that one of the things that we have to remember is that when we're talking about this problem of human trafficking, modern slavery, whatever euphemism we're calling it these days, at the core, what we're talking about is all of the activities in holding somebody in, or even reducing them to a condition of compelled service. So this is not minimum wage violations. This is not OSHA violations. It's not bad working conditions. It's not prostitution, qua prostitution. It involves all of those things. And it's at the intersection, perhaps, of where human rights, labor standards, transnational organized crime, gender, and ethnicity all come together. And right in the middle of all of those, right where almost every national authority and where every subgroup within those national authorities overlap, that's where human trafficking is. And the reason I say that overlap is, I think about a case that I did when I was a prosecutor, where the way that the FBI, INS, Labor Department, Florida Labor Department, etc., all had carved up their geographic area of enforcement, left a sliver right in central Florida that was about 30 miles long and 15 miles wide. And that was where everybody was holding their agricultural crews in slavery, because that was where there were no police. That was where there was no enforcement. And I think that, to me, that's an allegory for the entire fight against human trafficking. The traffickers find those places. They find where we say, well, I don't work on trafficking, I just work on child protective issues. Or I don't work on trafficking, I work on labor standards. Or I don't work on trafficking, I'm a human rights lawyer. And when we all do that, we're creating that zone of impunity. And I think that that's one of the reasons why trafficking is so prevalent in the modern era, is because we now have the ability for them to exploit those zones of impunity. Go back 100 years, you had to somehow recruit somebody, typically in Southeastern Europe, tell them that there was a good job for them in New York, and then get them all the way here, Lower East Side, tenements, etc., exploit them, but go back and get them one at a time. Takes 6 months. Today, you can get somebody in the United States and you can get them into an exploitative situation within about 36 hours. And I think that the explosion of information technology, the explosion of the ability to move people is one, that plus this problem of everybody saying this is somebody other than me that should be taking care of that. I think that's why we're seeing this explosion of human trafficking.
You know, to build on what Ambassador CdeBaca said, in our study of human trafficking, and I have to admit, we gathered a group of faith leaders under the President's Advisory Council from a broad spectrum of faiths, as well as heads of major non-profits. And when they gave us the issue of human trafficking, we were just dumbfounded. We did not know. And these are the heads of major religions. We knew it existed. We did not know what was going on in our own communities, in our own churches, in our own synagogues, in our own organizations. And if we didn't know, then we could only imagine that so many people out there didn't know. And I think my part of the problem is we don't know, or it's somebody else. And I think we need to raise that awareness. I think all of you being here and listening to the people who just spoke in terms of what they're doing, that is critically important, because I think once you know, it's very hard to turn your back on it. It is also a very high profit, low risk business. And part of what we need to do is switch that paradigm and make it very high risk and low profit. And we were in a session yesterday when a police officer said, you know, all the people who used to do drug deals, they now traffic in humans because the penalties, the governmental penalties, are less for the human traffickers than they are for the drug traffickers. So we have a lot of things we have to change, but first I think everybody needs to know what, you know, goes on, because we don't feel it touches our own lives, but indeed it does touch all of us.
And I would simply add, it's a $32 billion industry, supply and demand. There's a crack in the armor, and we work in silos. And until we continue the dialogue across industry, it's going to go on. And so I think that's what we're here.
And I want to challenge some of the analysts in the audience, because we use the $32 billion figure. This is something that came out of the ILO from their earlier study, in which they were saying there was only about 3.5 million people in human trafficking in the world. Because at that point they were exempting out bonded labor, there was some different methodologies. The new study that they've done, and they haven't followed it up with what the cost, what the profit to the traffickers are, etc. Their new study puts us at this 21 million figure. And so if we're talking 32 billion when we thought this was about a 3 million victim crime, I'd love to see some new numbers out there as to what does a 21 million victim crime look like as far as the economic impact.
Exactly.
Either way, it's unacceptable.
So I'm sure everyone in the audience would like to hear about what you and your groups are doing to help confront and eradicate modern day slavery.
Well, and also the crime is such a hidden crime. So each one of us have to educate ourselves what is modern day slavery, because slavery 100 years ago is different than slavery now. And I'm sorry, what's the question again?
What are you and your organization seeking to do to stop, confront erase this practice?
Awareness, it's always number one priority to raise awareness, and because raising awareness, that's how we get the information out there. That's how everyone's get educated. Awareness is number one thing. And for me, when I heard that a victim being rescued because they read something, on newspaper or magazine, because of the interview that survivor did, it helps other victims. So that's very important.
Letty, can you talk a little about what Delta Airlines and
Sure.
you are doing to
And I mean,
try-
it's exactly the awareness perspective. Approximately 3 years ago, specifically 2010, there were a number of people who approached Richard Anderson, our CEO, at stakeholder meetings, no doubt. And I think he was questioned, where does Delta fit in this scheme, in this story, on the storyboard? And Richard immediately said that Delta would immediately start to look at ways to bring about awareness within the corporation. And of course, like what Susan said, I mean, at the beginning, everyone said, well, what does that mean? Are we involved in human trafficking? Is the Delta Metal involved in human trafficking? Where is it taking place? And I think that still exists today, but since then, I'll certainly fast forward. We have been committed to training and bringing about awareness to all 80,000 employees and those that we do business with. Specifically 3 areas. Since 2011, we have signed on to the ECPAT code. I'm glad that someone's here to represent ECPAT. We have also put in place a policy for our employees. And our biggest undertaking has been the training component. We've worked with the Department of Transportation. We worked not only with ECPAT, but with CdeBaca, which is the Global Business Coalition Against Human Trafficking, and LTHAT, which is the Leaders Against Trafficking. And through that, we've been able to use some of their training, but we Deltaize it, of course, and our training is ongoing as I speak. And literally, when we launched our training, within 2 weeks, and I'm happy to say we had more than 6,000 employees take our training. So we've gone from 0 to 60 as soon as we launched the training. Number one, people were dumbfounded initially. But then they were very proud that Delta, as one of the first legacy carriers, would take this initiative on. I know we're going to talk about that a little bit later, but the training has been, the response to the training has been phenomenal.